All right, welcome to this video on arrays, searching arrays, passing array elements to functions, and passing an entire array to a function. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing some examples. So let's start with searching an array. All right, so in order to search array, we need to have an array. So I'm going to use a very small array, but this could work for any size array. So let's declare our array. So we're going to use an integer array. Oh, I don't like that color. All right, let me get a better color. So let's use an integer array, and we can name this integer array scores. And for simplicity, I'm going to make it very small, size 6, and I'm going to put the scores into it. 2, 4, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm also, every time that we declare an array, we should also declare a count that keeps track of how many actual filled items are in our array. So if I've put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items in this array, then my count would be 6. If I only put 5 items in the array, my count would be 5. So let's draw a little picture over here of this array. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The name of the array is scores, and we have data in it. We have a 2 here, a score of 2, a score of 4, 2, 1, 3, and 5. All right, so these are the scores. So now we're going to search through the array to see if we can find a match. Now there's a bunch of different ways to do it. The first way I'm going to do it is just with a loop, and then the next time I'm going to do it with a function. So we're going to have to draw this again. All right, so what does that mean? All right, so I'm going to have a target. So I'm going to have a number which is called a target. And the target is the value that we're going to be searching for. So just because of space, I'm going to pretend that I prompt, and then I'm going to scan in for the target. So what am I doing here? Okay, so my prompt is asking the user to enter a number. So the user is going to enter a number, and then I'm going to search through the array to see if I can find a match in the array that matches that number. Okay, so how do I search through an array? The same way that you go through an array to print it onto the screen, to fill it up. We use the same for loop. So we're going to go for I equals 0, I less than count, that's the number of items that are in my array, I plus plus, we're going to go one at a time and search each element in the array. So what do we want to do? All right, so if the user enters for the target, they enter the number 1, for example. Okay, so target has the value of 1. So we want to search through and see if this is a 1, or 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 this is a 1. So we're going to search to see if we can find a match. What do we want to do with it when we find the match? I don't know. I'm just demonstrating what you can do and how you can search. So how would we test if we were able to find a match? So we're going to have to test scores at index 0, scores at index 1, scores at index 2, and compare them with our target. So the way you would do that is with a condition. We'd say if target is equal to or equals scores at index I, then we found a match. Again, this is just a lecture describing what can be done. So what do we want to do when we find a match? Maybe we want to change the value. Maybe we want to return the Maybe we want to know what the index is. So these are called the indexes down here. The index says what element it is. So in this case, if our target is a 1, what we would do is we would start at 0 and we would compare. If 1 equals and scores at index 0, let's just put the 0 in here. So we start when I is 0, so we'd be at scores at index 0. Scores at index 0 is a 2. So does 1 equal 2? No, it does not. So now we're going to change this to scores at index 1. Scores at index 1 is a 4. Does 1 equal 4? No, it does not. So now we're going to change this to scores at index 2, which is a 2. Does 1 equal 2? No, it does not. We would change this then to scores at index 3, which is a 1. Does 1 equal 1? Yes, it does. So that means that we have found a match. Okay, now say for example the target that was entered was not a 1. The target that was entered, I'll change this back to an I right now. The target that was entered is a 2. So we're going to compare scores at index 0, which is a 2, and yes, we found a match. And if we continue through, we would actually find 2 matches. We would find 1 match at index 0 and 1 match at index 2. Now obviously, this is just a demonstration of how you search through an array. First, you need to decide what it is that you want to do when you're searching the array. So in the next slide, I'm going to do a little more advanced problem with using functions. So I'm going to write the definition of a function called search. This is a function called search that takes 3 arguments. The first argument is going to be an array of integers. So it's going to take an integer array. Now, when you have an argument that goes into when you have functions, you need to explain what the data type is for each argument. So we know our different data type choices. We can do an int, we can do a double, we can do a char, we can do an int pointer, a double pointer, a char pointer, a file pointer, an integer array, a double array, or a character array. Now all of these right here are potential, can be used as parameters or arguments to functions. Parameter data. So this is all parameter data. You can have any combination. Your functions, when you write a function, they can take integers, doubles, characters, integer pointers, double pointers, character pointers, file pointers, integer arrays, double arrays, and character arrays. And I am aware that a character array is also a pointer, but in this class we want to make sure that we know when we're dealing with arrays and we know when we're dealing with just pointers to one single element of that. So we could have any combination in our functions of these different data types. So I'm going to erase this right now because I'm out of space. And we're going to go back to writing our search function. So our search function, this is what we're going to do. Write the definition of a function called search that takes 3 arguments. The first argument is an integer array. The second argument is the number of items in the array. That means the count of how many actual elements are in that array. So like I said before, you could have an array of size 10 and only use 5 of those elements. That's a partial array. If you need to refresh that, there's a video on partial arrays. And the third argument is a target. So this target is going to be what we're going to be searching for in the array. So in our last example, Okay, so what this function is going to return, it's going to return the index of the first time that it finds a target. So it's going to return the index. The index is the location. Now in this case, since we're going to return it right away, it's going to return the index. That's the first time that it appears. Okay, so we could call this function with any array, as long as it is an integer array, with any variable that is an integer, that's hopefully one that's keeping count of the number of elements in the array, and with any target, that would be any integer at all, and we want to search to see if our array contains that target. So how would we do this? We would just use our same for loop, and we would search for I equals 0, I less than count, that's the number of filled items, the number of filled items, I plus plus, if our array at location I is equal to the target, that means that is the first time we found a match. We want to return the location, and the location is going to be stored in the variable I. So you want to return I. So this loop, what it's going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to search through the array, whatever array we pass to it. It's going to take the number of elements that is in the array, and it's going to take the target that we're looking for. It's going to go through the array, starting at index 0, going up to count. So actually going up to count minus 1. So if you have 10 items in there, it would go from 0 to 9. If you have 15 items, it would go from 0 to 14. It's going to go one at a time, and it's going to check if anywhere in the array matches the target, and then it's going to return, and this is the index. It's going to return the location in which the target is. So now let's go through, and I will do this again on the next slide with an actual array. All right, so let's go to the next slide, and we're going to, all right, so we're going to search an array and pass it to a function. So this is my array. So I have in my main function here, so I have this, my search, this is my prototype for my search function. My search function takes an integer array. It takes an integer count, and it takes an integer target. This is the prototype, and this is my main function. Okay, so this was my array, my int array, which has scores in it. And I'm going to make it size 10, but I'm only going to put 5 scores in there. 2, 1, 2, 6, 4. So that means I'm going to have a count that is 5, because I'm only keeping 5 elements in there. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now I'm going to call my search function. So I want to say int location. That's the location of the first target. So I'm going to have a target too. I'm going to say int target equals, and again, this is just to give you an example and draw a picture. Certainly you want to have a more interactive program and have the user pick the target. You possibly want to have the user pick the count. So this is just an example that demonstrates so that I can draw you a picture and go through it. So I'm just assigning values just so we can take a look and see what's happening. So the target is going to be a 1. So it should, if the index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the function would return a 1. That's confusing. So I will change the target to a 6. Because that 1 is in the index 1. So I'll change the target to a 6, so the function should return a 3 because that's the location. So we want to say location equals, and we're going to say search And we're going to pass our array, which is scores. Now this is a common error. Students think they have to put the brackets when they pass an array to a function, but the function already knows that the first argument or first parameter to the function is an array, so you do not need to put the brackets. It's going to pass the count, which is 5, or in this case we have a variable that keeps the count, and it's going to pass the target, which we have a variable that keeps the target. Now this is a local target in the main function, and we're going to have another target in the search function. Now of course after this we probably want to do something with the location, and since I don't really have the space to write it and I want to be able to go through the logic of this with you, then we have other videos with actual code and you should take the code samples down and practice. So we have this array called scores, and so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's capable of storing 9 elements. I'm filling the array by putting a 2 here, a 1, a 2, a 6, and a 4, and my count is 5. In this situation, that's just a line to demonstrate that that's my count, is at location 5. So now that's all I've done right here. I have a target which has a value of 6. So in my search function, I'm going to have a return type of integer. The function is called search. It's going to take an integer array, an integer count, and an integer target. Now this target, and this target are actually 2 different variables. So if it confuses you, it's a good idea to make it 2 different names. This target is local to the main function, and this target, TGT, is local to the search function. So all it's going to do is it's going to go through using that same for loop for I equals 0, I less than count. Again, this variable count, this is the local count variable for the search function, and this is the local count variable for the main function. And it's going to search through and compare if target is equal to any of the elements in the array, then it's going to return the location. All right, so let's just run through this and see what happens. So we declared our array. I have the picture here. We have our count, which is 5. So in the main function, we have a count, which is 5, and we have another variable called TGT, which has a 6, and we have another variable called LOC, which has a question mark. Inside of our search function, when our search function gets called, this scores array is going to get passed into the search function right here, and AR is going to get declared. But AR is actually just a pointer, so AR will get declared and will point to the same location in memory. So now we have 2 pointers that are pointing to the same location in memory and sharing this array. So any changes, if I were to make changes inside of this function to the array, those changes would also be reflected in the scores array because they're pointing to the same location in memory. So this is AR, this is an array. That's this array right here, AR. The AR will get declared and will point to the same location. So now from inside of this function, using the name AR, I have the ability to access the same array. So in my main function, the name of the array is scores, and in my search function, the name of the array is AR. I also have a variable called count, which is making a copy of the other count. I also have a variable called TGT, which makes a copy of the TGT that's in the main function. So these are the local variable names, AR, count, and TGT, and these are the local variable names in main, scores, count, TGT, and location. So after you go through this, you start where I equals 0 and you compare to see if 6 is the target is equal to 2. No, it's not. So you are not going to return an I. You're going to go check here. Does 6 equal 1? No, it does not. Does 6 equal 2? No, it does not. Does 6 equal 6? Yes, it does. So that happens when I is 3. So it's going to return I, which in this case is a 3. When that 3 gets turned back, that 3 will then be assigned to the variable location. So the value of the variable location is going to be changed to 3. So now we know that scores at index location, okay, which is a 3, has the value of 6. So of course you need to pay attention to this, and we have videos where we go through and look at the code, but it's a very good idea to draw pictures and try to follow along, and you will be having exercises in which you try to locate things in arrays and find and change things and locate them. So this is just demonstrating how you pass an array to a function and how you search through an array.